Welcome to the AESQ Human Factors Subject Matter Interest Group watch party for the podcast video. This is a bit of an experiment by the team into something that's a bit more short form material to be able to distribute and share with the wider supply chain. So we had this idea a few months ago, very quickly put it into effect, and we've got a bit of a podcast to watch over the next 15 minutes. Following that, there's opportunity for a short question and answer session, and happy for answers to go into the chat. Also happy for, as we're on Teams, raise hand, ask questions, and we'll answer as many as we can in the time we've got available. So the team have done some fantastic work producing this. So without much further introduction, I'll hand over to the video. Rodolfo, if we can start to play. Thank you very much.
So, hello, everybody. We are members of the AESQ Human Factors Subject Matter Interest Group. And this is a video podcast that we're wanting to put together and distribute to anyone who can go into the AESQ website and take this down and get some learnings from it. My name is Dan Carroll, and I'm from Precision Cast Parts Corporation.
Hi, I'm Bethany Ryan, and I work with GE Aerospace.
And Beata Tarczon, I am MTO Engines.
And today what we'd like to talk about is let's talk about something that's, not always everyone's favorite. Let's talk about discipline. But we're going to kind of talk about this and frame it around a case study, a real world example, using the human performance culpability matrix. So, Bethany, can you tell me about a scenario, something that really has happened that you and your team have worked on, kind of through a human factors lens?
So an example that comes to mind is we had a situation where somebody had used the incorrect coolant. When that happens, it's something that's not approved, hasn't yet been analyzed, which means that that's a non-compliance. We only use approved coolants when we're running parts. And so therefore, with this situation, it would lead to, at best, a delivery delay, which is, if we perform analysis and determine that that didn't have any inadvertent impact to the parts, then there could be, maybe those parts would be fine. Also, that kind of situation could result in all parts being scrap. And so not a great thing. There's a lot of nerves that go into that. And it is a case where it's pretty easy to kind of jump to calling that error the cause of the event and looking to discipline the employee.
Yeah, I think we've all experienced that in one form or another in our careers.
So can you explain us so-called normal or traditional way of investigation in which very often the discipline of work is the leading approach?
Yeah, so I think this would resonate with a lot of different situations. So if kind of traditional approach here, and we viewed that human error that was made as the cause, then the investigation would result in a summary, something along the lines of what the employee failed to do, failing to follow work instructions, have an assumption that they didn't care enough to pay enough attention to what they were doing, and therefore an appropriate action would be discipline.
Bethany, we have this culpability matrix. We kind of started talking about that on the intro slide that is available in the reference manual 13,010. It is Appendix H in there for everybody out there. And this can help us determine if discipline is warranted or not. It's kind of gets us in that mindset, did an intentional act or reckless violation occur? So can you show us that culpability matrix? So here is really what we're getting into. Was an intentional act? Was it the not an error versus, hey, the person made a mistake. It was an error on that. And I think most of the time we go through in the traditional sets and be like, we're going to discipline the person that did it on purpose. But I think that's really, as we walk through this and really start thinking down about it, that's probably the rare case as we're going through it. But could you show us how you went through this in the coolant example that you were showing us before?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great tool for that. There's a lot of mantras in the human factors world about trying to avoid, disciplining for human error. But what this helps separate, what is a human error and what is a systems violation versus something that's reckless or intentional act. So it can be a really helpful tool if we're thinking, like, leaning toward discipline as a check, being like, is it really the case when that makes sense? For this situation, starting with question 1 on the upper left is, were the actions intended? And here felt like that was no. This operator didn't intentionally use the incorrect coolant. Then it moves over to, did the employee knowingly violate expectations? Dan, what do you think if you were analyzing this? What do you think the answer to that question would be?
Thinking about it, and I don't think that this person did that on purpose using the wrong coolant. It doesn't seem like, from what you told us at the beginning, that they were like, hey, you know what? I know I'm not supposed to use this one, but I'm gonna use it anyway. So I would say no.
Yeah, that's where we concluded as well. Is like, okay, no, it wasn't like a knowing violation. And that brings us to this really important question. And that's, would a peer have behaved differently under these or very similar circumstances? We did kind of go back and forth a bit, trying to understand this, being like, could other people make this mistake? Potentially. Do they normally? No. Do we expect them to? No. And so here we said, would a peer have behaved differently? Ended up saying typically yes. Typically the correct coolant is used. Felt that that was the correct answer there.
Okay.
And then we get to this next question on the tree that says, were there deficiencies in training, selection, assignment, or experience? So in this situation, the task where the error was made was identifying the correct coolant. So matching the work instructions to the coolant type. And so, this was a very experienced, trained operator. And so determined that no, the problem wasn't deficiencies in training, which led us to the conclusion that the situation was a possible negligent error. But importantly, it was an error versus, a reckless violation or intentional act.
Okay. So really, they didn't do an error. They didn't intend for the outcome to happen. It wasn't on purpose.
Certainly.
Okay. So, Bethany, can you kind of walk us through what was the end game here in this this scenario?
Yeah. So, setting ourselves up, as the kind of the learning and investigation team was, so determining that the cause wasn't the human error. We had the opportunity to learn from this process, and so we partnered with the operator and just asked to learn a bit more about what identifying and changing the coolants over, what that process really looked like. And he explained to us that there was 2 main coolants that were used in the shop, and they both came in identical 55-gallon pink drums, and each had a fairly small sticker on the top with, I think it was like a 10 to 12 digit alphanumeric code. And there was 1 digit in the middle of this code that was different between the 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So seeing that, and also taking into consideration that this event happened in the middle of the night on 3rd shift, taking all of that together really got us thinking, like, okay, maybe there is a better way for these to be differentiated. And we called the coolant vendor and just explained the situation, saying like, hey, we have this issue sometimes in our shop, and to get some of their thoughts on it. And the coolant vendor actually said that they sometimes had very similar issues in their own internal operations. And they suggested and implemented having one of them come in a blue drum.
I see how that and now is, in my head, how it kind of works. If I looking at a string of numbers, I can see where the operator, hey, maybe a, 5 and a 6, 6 and a 9, they kind of look the same. You invert them in your head, but I use a very simple example that we all use all over the world every day when we're driving. No matter where you are in the world, green, it doesn't say green. You see a green light, that means go. You see a red light, that means stop. It doesn't say stop on it. So I think this color coding, I could see where that could be a very effective way, a very quick way for the human to be like, these are distinctly different.
Yeah, it seemed like a simple idea, a simple solution, but certainly a maybe worthwhile and beneficial one. But it was an additional thing that happened that was really interesting with this is because, this wasn't, we didn't go down like, the blame and discipline path. We went down the, partner together and let's work together to learn and improve. After this was implemented, the operators on their own started, keeping track and creating kind of a data set on the different, metal types and parts and the different types of machines that were used, trying to determine what the correlation was, like why did some parts use the pink drum and some use the blue drum, and ended up having a very hard time finding that connection. And so they brought all of that information up, with their supervisor team and the quality team, and it ended up being uncovered that the type of coolant that was called out on the work instruction was pretty much just based on whichever coolant happened to be in the machine when the first article was completed. And so that highlighted a pretty large administrative burden that the shop had that truly was unnecessary. And so together with quality and production, they started moving toward getting all of the parts approved on a single coolant so that, this error trap as a whole would be eliminated from the process.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So what I'm getting out of this, Bethany, kind of working with the operator, not blaming the operator, you ultimately came down to a single solution, not having multiple coolants around. That was, you got everything down to one coolant, probably some cost savings from the company, probably making it a lot easier for all operators to go through and use. It's pretty interesting, pretty cool conclusion at the end of this by partnering with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So, Bethany, based on your analysis results, can you describe us the difference when the event is understood with the human factor lens instead of the traditional way?
Yeah, I think that this event really does highlight how big of a difference there is. Where we talked, a few slides ago, with a traditional lens and concluding that human error was the cause, it oftentimes just leads to discipline, and that's kind of the end of the learning. But when we determine that in fact it was human error and that's a consequence of the system, that opens up the opportunity for us to learn a lot more about what in that system led to the error, and focusing on that as an opportunity to improve. And those were the things that included color coding the drums to help make them easier differentiated, and moving on to even simplifying the process overall to a single coolant.
So we can say that starting from the human behavior, as similar as in the traditional analysis, we can get to just by considering the human factors which influence of the operator, we can finally get to the process improvement.
Yeah, for sure. And it really comes down to, determining, hey, is this something that, was an intentional act or, reckless violation, or is it something more like that was system induced or truly human error?
Well, I think all of those things is a great example. Thank you, Bethany, for sharing that. Thank you for Beata for being a part of this as well. And we encourage everybody to go through, use the reference manual. The next time you're in a tough situation where maybe your first instinct is, and we've all been there, we're gonna discipline the employee, we're gonna retrain them. Use that culpability matrix that's in RM 13010 Appendix H, and run the scenario through there. Run it through those questions and see, really, is it the person or is it the system? That's what we really want to get down to with that. So, thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Beata.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A big thank you to the team there. I'd like to open it up for any questions anybody has on the video. It is already available on the AESQ website, and we're also happy to take some feedback. Is this a format that would work for people, as well as what other things you'd like to see? So happy for questions. Raise hand, put it in the chat. We've got 10-15 minutes to answer for you all. I think we might have stunned silence. We've got a hand up, John. Yeah, just need to unmute and then.
There we go. Now you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, this goes back to something that happened in our organization at GE Aerospace out on the flight test center many years ago. But we had a supervisor load a hazardous chemical in his truck to take it over to our other website, and that's in strict violation of the California's hazardous material transportation rules. We actually had a lot of things we had to do, and I ended up disciplining him. In fact, I demoted him. And coming back to, if we had actually followed this this matrix here, I don't know that that would have been taken that far. We certainly didn't partner. I lashed out, I think, because I was ultimately responsible as manager of that facility, and I could be charged with from California, and I actually had to demonstrate to California that I had taken, in this case, disciplinary action, but I could have probably sold it by taking some other action instead. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was particularly he did this. I think he did it intentionally because he was trying to solve a problem where the chemical wasn't where it was needed, but he didn't take the proper venue to do that. And then it switches over to me. Oh my gosh, I'm ultimately responsible for this, and I could be charged. And I actually had to self-report myself to California, and also had to tell them how we had disciplined the employee. So it was,
that's a really good, really good reflection there. I think one of the key takeaways from me from this activity is, will the action taken prevent the outcome will the action taken prevent it being repeated in the future? And if it's around the systematic things or the system things that people are aware of what they need to do, they've got the right tools in place, procedures, things like that, the right equipment, then they're less likely to do things like that. And you put someone else in that person's shoes, they could well do the same thing another year down the line. And the only thing that really stops them then is in the case where they've been disciplined, is the fear because they've seen somebody else disciplined. But then that drives things like the open reporting culture underground, and as leadership we get to hear a lot less. So no, that's That's a very good reflection. Thank you. Well, Michael, got another hand up?
Yes, thank you. I'm Mike Smith with GE Aerospace. And in regard to the first question, I do like the format. I think this is great. It's concise and informative. So thank you for that. And then I just wanted to offer up, I think this is great subject. And to me, what I guess, generates in my mind not a question and an opportunity. It's nice to stop at the employee and consider alternatives to discipline such as human factors, but I think we should also ask ourselves, is there anything else in general we can do? Like, was there an opportunity for training? Like a lot of times I'll see issues with suppliers and we'll stop it at the employee did this and the company is going to correct some process sheet, but we don't bring it internally to GE and say, how could we have caught it earlier? How could we have prevented this mistake at the supplier? Or other questions like that, I think are, analogous to broadening the question and perspective on how do we resolve and present problems such as this in the future. So thank you for listening to me. Have a nice day.
That was a really, really good reflection as well. So thank you very much for that, Mike. We've got a couple of things in the chat. We've got Audrey, really likes the format. Lesson was brief to the point, well illustrated. So it feels like kind of, we're starting to get good feedback. This is something we can take forward a bit more. There is another question in the chat as well. Any tips on how engineers can empower operators and techs? I bet folks who are cross-trained on task and noticed inconsistencies and may be afraid to challenge the status quo. Amazing segment. Thank you. I'd like to open this one up to Dan, Bethany, Beata. Have you got any answers or an answer for that question from?
I think a lot of it may come from how we address the situation. So, coming in from a point of learning, I think going off John's example could be a really good one, because in reality, who is better to identify, when it's very difficult to be able to know what to do in the situation that this hazardous material is in the wrong location. Sounds like it needs to be somewhere else for the work to get done, trying to help all that happen. That person is probably the person with the best knowledge to be able to help make the process more clear to everyone else. So if you're in charge of that investigation or that learning opportunity, that's where that empowerment can really happen. If the immediate response is jumping to blame, that person may get protective and maybe not feel psychologically safe enough to share that learning, because maybe there's other things that you don't yet know that are also incorrect. And without knowing that whole picture, it's really hard to put a big action in place. So I think looking at those folks rather than the people that need to be fixed and the people that are messing things up as they have the answers. So it's your job to uncover the answer and you don't know what to do, but that person does. And so seeing them as the source of that really important knowledge can really help a lot.
Yep. And so I've been guilty myself of going in and doing these kinds of things and talking to the person who made the error as why'd you do that? Tell me what was going through your mind at this time when you did that. So I've been kind of going through and learning and changing my language. So some tips, some questions that help me get through information and kind of break down that accusatory type of talk with tell me, explain to me, describe to me, show me. And that has really been beneficial to me personally, going through and kind of getting to it kind of takes it off the person and the immediate gut reaction is put it on the person. That's how I've been trained my whole life to do that. So it's been a little bit different for me. Using those words kind of goes through and helps get to the root of the problem.
I think the other one on this question just to add something, is when you've got an organization where people are afraid to challenge the status quo, that's where the importance of a good reporting system and a good open reporting culture comes into place.
Yeah.
So that there are avenues that are independent where people can go to and say, hang on a minute, I've noticed something that I don't think is quite right. And that can be investigated, in an appropriate way and checked and confirmed to, at the end of the day, prevent defects leaving our facilities, and to keep our products safe. So it's a topic I want to touch in a future one of these ones that we're planning in terms of reporting systems. That may be the next one that we produce. So hopefully that will help answer the question. One more question here from Stuart McIntyre, and it's is there an opportunity to increase the emphasis of human factor considerations as part of PFMEA potential causes of failure within RM 13004, so we can fix the problem before we have it? And go on, this is a pet subject of mine. When it comes to human factors, we learn through robust and rigorous investigations. The output of those investigations should go into our FMEAs, so that when we come to produce the next product in that line, the FMEA is learning as we go, and the products are getting better and better and taking the learning from things that happened one product iteration ago, or two or three. I don't think we've made those connections robustly yet in the industry, but the opportunities are there, and it's down to the good hard work that we do to make sure we make those linkages. And I think, yes, there's opportunities to strengthen, not just within RM 13004, but I think it's 13001 problem solving. It's either 1 or 0, but yeah, both of them, I think, we should have something that helps put that emphasis on.
Yeah, I think those cross RM connections are definitely just going to bring us all closer and work together. There is a webinar, a related topic webinar on the AESQ website. I'll send it for some review that might be helpful with that particular question. Yeah,
no, brilliant. So I think we're almost out of time today. So thank you very much, everyone. If there's any further questions, anything you want to ask, want to engage with the team, we have on the phone or on the computer a LinkedIn community of practice for the RM 13010 subject matter interest group. Please join. You can ask your questions there, or you can ask them directly through the AESQ website. Really happy to engage with anyone on the subject and topics of human factor. As you can tell, we're all really passionate about it, and we all really love it a lot. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a fantastic day.